The first thing that we need to do to get started is go ahead and remove the old fence. To do this, I'm using a sawzall and a hammer to take out all of the major pieces first. As you can see, this fence is pretty old, so the removal process was fairly easy. This fence wasn't originally on the to-do list for this property flip, but my neighbor was looking to have one installed. She paid for all of the material and even offered to pay me for my time, but I was happy to do the work for free as long as I could put it on my YouTube channel. It ended up being a win-win situation for everyone, and she was super happy with the end results. Whoever originally installed this fence didn't concrete the 4x4 post. So to remove them, I simply just shook them back and forth until they became loose and then picked them up and pulled them out. Since my neighbor was having this new fence installed, I no longer saw the need to have this metal fence on my side of the yard. So here I'm removing it. The removal process was actually pretty easy for this fence. The top of the fence pops off with a few taps of a hammer and can be removed in one piece. And the chain link portion needs a little bit of force to be pulled out of the overgrown roots, but once it's removed, it rolls up and makes for easy disposal. The next thing to do was to dig the holes for the gate fence post. I used a fence post hole digger, but another alternative for this would be to rent an auger if you have that option. Here I'm making a concrete pad for one of my posts. In the center, I added two 4x4s for my double gate. To unite them, I'm using lag screws. For the post, you want to ensure that your holes are 2 feet deep. And then here, I'm adding green fast setting concrete bags. Pro tip. Tie a string across the tops of your posts to keep everything straight and aligned during your project. The concrete that I'm using is fast setting concrete mix and requires no mixing before application. Simply just add the concrete to your 2-foot dug hole and then apply the water as needed. Allow this application to sit for about 30 minutes before you build on top of it. Here I am adding the braces for my gate fence boards. I've marked off where I wanted the braces, and then I use a level to ensure that everything is aligned. Having an 8-foot level helps a lot during this process, as it ensures everything is level across multiple sections and gaps. When laying the fence boards, it's important that whichever side you start with is as straight as possible. This will set the standard for the rest of the gate. Once you have one side completed, you can move on to the other side, using a string as a guide to keep everything aligned. For the gates, I use this Easy Gate No Sag gate kit. The installation was super easy. Just measure your gate's width and height, and then cut the 2x4s down to size. Once the 2x4s are ready, assemble them with your gate kit. Please note, hanging the actual gate itself is easier with 2 people. If you do not have someone to help you, I'd recommend taking a spare 2x4 and using it as a spacer. To add the fence boards, start by placing one board and then attaching the hardware. The hardware is going to hold the gate in place while you add the rest of the fence boards. When I removed the old fence, I was hoping to use the existing holes for the new post. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case. None of the holes were dug 2 feet deep, and they weren't properly spaced or aligned. So I ended up redigging the holes. Luckily, I was able to finish digging all of my fence posts before this happened. Let's go ahead and start setting fence posts. So first thing you want to do is go ahead and attach your level. Next, you want to add fast setting concrete mix. And here what you're trying to do is just get it on the line. There we go. So now it's aligned with everything else. You can worry about level at the end because you're going to be able to wiggle it around a bit. Okay, now you want to add about a gallon of water. As that's settling, it takes about 30 minutes, but the first thing you want to do before it really gets set in is make sure these bubbles here are all aligned. And then it's pushed up against your the line that you've created. So to make sure everything's compact, what I like to do is I like to use my ground level. If you don't have one of these, you can always use the back of a shovel. Lastly, just go ahead and add a thin layer of mud back on top of it. Okay, so while this one's settling, you can go ahead and move on to your next post. One of the last things I needed to add to this gate was this pull tab that opens the latch. Is it awkward looking? Huh? Now I needed to add my cross braces to my fence post. Since I had to do this alone, I screwed in a temporary screw into one side of the post to hold it up, and then I screwed in the other side. Because my posts weren't exactly 8 foot on center, I used 10-foot 2x4s. And then just cut them down to size at the center using my circle saw. I repeated this process all the way down, using an 8-foot level as a guide to make sure that everything was straight. Last thing left to do was add my fence boards. If you are doing this at home, remember to install the fence boards touching one another. Because the wood is pressure treated, it will shrink over time once it dries. And as always, thanks for watching. Alright, so that wraps it up for this video. Make sure you leave a like and hit that subscribe button.